My name is Pamela McBride. I'm 33 years old. Every Sunday evening, without fail, I drive to my parents' house for dinner. It's a ritual that's lasted for as long as I can remember. Roast chicken, soft jazz from my father's old speakers. My mother's chatter about the neighborhood and the same old seating arrangement, my parents on one side of the table. My sister Lauren glowing like a star under a spotlight. That night started no differently. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a small bouquet of flowers from my own garden, a habit that felt more like self-comfort than tradition now. "Pamela, you're late," my mother said from the kitchen. She didn't look up from the oven. "Traffic," I murmured, placing the wine on the counter. Lauren was already in the living room, curled up on the sofa with her phone, her glossy hair shining under the chandelier light. She was practically buzzing with excitement, the kind of restless energy that always meant she had something big to announce. When dinner was served, she didn't even wait for everyone to sit. "I have incredible news," she declared, her voice light and theatrical. "I'm buying a house." My mother gasped. "Really?" "Oh, sweetheart, that's amazing." "It's not just any house," Lauren continued, eyes gleaming. "It's a Victorian mansion in the most prestigious neighborhood. You've probably seen it. They filmed one of my favorite TV shows there." She pulled up pictures on her phone, showing off the ornate staircases, the stained glass windows, the sprawling yard. My parents leaned in close, smiling and admiring every detail. I stayed quiet, sipping my wine, my reflection rippling in the glass. "It's gorgeous," my mother said, her tone dripping with pride. "Perfect for your blog, darling," my father added. "All that character, the vintage look, your followers will love it." Lauren grinned. "Exactly. I'll film my renovation journey, do collaborations with interior brands, maybe even host a launch party there once it's done." They kept talking, building castles of admiration around her words. Then, as if remembering I existed, my father turned to me. "And how are things with you, Pamela?" I smiled. "Actually, I've been thinking about buying a house too." There was a pause, just a heartbeat, and then laughter, the kind that stings. My father chuckled. "You a house like Lauren's. Come on, Pamela, your little gardening job can't cover that." Lauren laughed too, that polished social media perfect laugh. "Maybe you can help me with the garden when I move in. You know, do your landscaping magic." My mother added softly, "Don't tease your sister," but she was smiling too. The air felt thick. I stabbed at my potatoes and said nothing. They went back to discussing Lauren's furniture, her renovation plans, her new content strategy. I might as well have been invisible. By the time dessert came, I drifted into silence completely. I nodded, where appropriate smiled when expected, and left as soon as I could without raising eyebrows. The night air was cool as I drove home. I turned off the radio and let the sound of the engine fill the car, a steady hum that drowned out their laughter, still echoing in my ears. When I finally reached my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened my laptop. On the screen was the real estate listing Lauren had shown at dinner. The same grand Victorian mansion, the same address. I stared at the photo of the wide porch and ivy-covered walls. My pulse steadied. I clicked Contact Realtor. "Hello," I said when a voice answered. "I'd like to schedule a viewing for the property on Ashwood Drive." The realtor hesitated. "Ah, yes, someone already viewed that house. A potential buyer very interested." "I know," I replied, a faint smile forming. "And I'm prepared to pay 5% above the asking price in cash." There was a long silence, then "I can show it to you tomorrow morning." "Perfect." When the call ended, I sat back, my heart pounding. The humiliation from dinner had faded into something sharper, something almost exhilarating. For years, they'd treated me as if my work didn't matter, as if success only counted if it came with followers and brand deals. They didn't know what I'd built, the company I owned, the contracts I'd won, the team that depended on me. I'd spent 5 years turning soil into beauty, designing spaces that made people fall in love with nature again. My company had grown quietly profitably, while I let them believe I was just a gardener. Now I thought, scrolling through the mansion photos again, it's time they learn what I've really done. In one image, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting gold across the dusty floorboards. I could almost feel the warmth on my skin. It wasn't just a house, it was the stage for something long overdue. I closed my laptop and whispered to the dark room, "They'll never see this coming." The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The sky outside my window was still pale and half asleep, that soft blue hour when the world feels like it's holding its breath. I made coffee, got dressed in a simple beige suit, professional but unassuming, and drove to Ashwood Drive. The house stood at the end of a quiet tree-lined street, its tall iron gates half covered in vines. Even from the outside, it had presence, the kind that demands attention without saying a word. The realtor, a polite woman in her 40s, greeted me by the gate. "You must be Ms. McBride. It's even more beautiful in person, isn't it?" "It is," I said, though. Beautiful wasn't the word. Alive felt closer, like the house itself was waiting for someone who would finally see it. As we walked through the front door, sunlight spilled through stained glass windows, painting the wooden floors in colors that danced. The air smelled faintly of dust and old lilacs. My fingers brushed the banister, worn smooth yet solid. "This home was built in 1897, the realtor said. "It needs some updates, but the bones are remarkable. There's history in every inch." I nodded, my mind already racing ahead, seeing the garden blooming again, the pathways I could design, the water features I could restore. My company had transformed parks, courtyards, estates, but this could be my masterpiece. We toured the kitchen, the library, the massive upstairs rooms. Each window looked out onto wild, overgrown gardens that stretched behind the house like a forgotten dream. By the time we returned to the foyer, I already knew. "I'll take it," I said simply. The realtor blinked. "Would you like to think it over?" "No need. I'm prepared to pay in cash. No contingencies." There was a moment of stunned silence before she found her voice. "Well, in that case, we can begin the paperwork today." It took less than a week. No mortgage, no waiting period, no hesitation. The transfer was smooth, silent, just the way I wanted it. The mansion on Ashwood Drive was mine. I didn't tell a soul. Not my friends, not my coworkers, and especially not my family. I went about my business as usual, running my company, visiting work sites, overseeing projects. But every evening I'd drive by my house just to see it standing there, proud and waiting. The irony made me smile. My parents were probably still gushing about Lauren's dream home, completely unaware that their invisible daughter had already bought it out from under her. At the next Sunday dinner, I arrived to find the air thicker than usual. Lauren sat at the table, her face pale and tense. My parents hovered nearby, trying to comfort her. "What's wrong?" I asked, setting my purse down. Lauren looked up, eyes glossy with disbelief. "Someone bought the house." "Oh," I said softly, sitting across from her. "That's unfortunate." "They offered more than I could," she continued, voice shaking. "The realtor said it was a cash offer. Who even does that? Who buys a house like that in cash?" My mother sighed, rubbing her shoulder. "It's all right, sweetheart. There are plenty of beautiful homes out there." "I don't want another house," Lauren snapped. "I want that one, that exact one." Her voice rose. My father's patience thinned. "We'll figure something out," he said, though his tone held no conviction. Then Lauren's eyes lit with sudden desperation. "I'll make them sell it to me. Everyone has a price. I'll find out who bought it and offer more. I'll convince them." I bit the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. My mother hesitated. "But that'll take more money than you have, darling." "Then sell the country house," Lauren said immediately. "Use that money for my down payment." My father froze. "What? You and Mom never even go there. You can buy another one later once my blog grows. But this house is important. It's part of my brand. Please." The silence that followed was heavy enough to feel physical. My mother looked torn. My father rubbed his temples. I just sipped my water. That night, as I drove home again, I let out a quiet laugh in the dark. My parents would do it. I knew them. They'd give up their heritage, their peace, anything just to see Lauren shine. And when they did, I'd be waiting. The next morning, I called my realtor. "My sister's going to contact you about the mansion," I said calmly. "Tell her you'll arrange a meeting with the owner. Make it sound like the sale might be possible for 10% above what I paid." The realtor chuckled. "So, you're setting her up." "I'm just teaching her the value of humility." When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair and stared out my office window. The city skyline shimmered in the distance. My reflection in the glass looked different, somehow stronger, colder, sure of itself. For the first time in years, I wasn't the quiet one at the table. I was the one holding all the cards. 2 weeks later, my aunt called me out of the blue. Her voice was hushed, urgent. "Pamela, did you hear your parents sold the country house?" I leaned back in my office chair, staring at the rows of plants lined up on the windowsill. "Did they?" "They gave Lauren the money," she said, her words tumbling over each other. "She's planning to use it for the mansion's down payment. Your mother's heartbroken, but your father insisted. Said it's for the family's future." I almost laughed, but it came out quieter, more like an exhale. "The family's future," I repeated. Interesting choice of words. That evening, I sat in front of my laptop, watching the live feed from the new security cameras I'd installed around the Ashwood property. The house was still empty, its windows dark. The camera caught every rustle of ivy, every flicker of passing headlights. And then one afternoon later that week, I saw them, my parents and Lauren, walking around my garden. Lauren wore oversized sunglasses and a bright designer coat, gesturing dramatically as she pointed toward the veranda, the old fountain, the oak tree in the back. She moved her hands like she already owned the place. My mother trailed behind, nodding softly. My father carried a folder under his arm, probably paperwork for the mortgage they were about to take on. I turned up the volume and heard Lauren's voice faintly through the recording. This will be the filming room, and that corner will knock down the wall open concept, obviously. I'll put a skylight above the kitchen. Natural light makes everything look better on camera. I smiled, shaking my head. On camera, I whispered. Always on camera. The phone rang. It was the realtor. Your sister reached out, she said, sounding almost amused. She wants to meet the owner this weekend. I told her I'd arrange it. Perfect, I said. Saturday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I hung up and stared at the mansion's image on my computer screen. The rooms were empty, but I could already feel the confrontation breathing inside those walls. Saturday came. The air was heavy with that pre-storm humidity, the kind that makes the world hold still. I parked a few houses down from the mansion and waited in my car. At 1:58 p.m., my parents' sedan pulled up. Lauren stepped out first, her heels clicking sharply against the driveway. My father followed, stiff in his suit. My mother looked nervous, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. I watched them walk inside with the realtor, the door closing behind them. 15 minutes passed. I could picture the scene in my head, Lauren charming, dramatic, explaining her vision. My parents smiling politely, waiting to meet this mysterious owner. Finally, I stepped out of my car and walked toward the mansion. My heels crunched against the gravel. My pulse was steady. The front door was slightly ajar. I could hear Lauren's voice echoing from inside, loud, pleading, full of self-importance. I need this house. You don't understand. It's not just a property, it's my future. My audience expects me to live here. It's part of my brand identity. I pushed the door open. The sound of it creaking made everyone turn at once. Lauren froze mid-sentence. My parents' smiles vanished. The realtor looked from me to them and back again, her face unreadable. Pamela, my mother said weakly, "What are you doing here?" Lauren frowned. "You're lost. The service entrance is in the back." I stepped forward, my voice calm. "I'm not lost." My father's brows knit together. "What's going on?" The realtor, bless her sense of drama, cleared her throat. "This is Ms. McBride," she said. "The owner." For a full 5 seconds, silence swallowed the room whole. The only sound was the ticking of an antique clock on the mantel. My father was the first to break. "This isn't funny, Pamela. Stop joking around." Lauren laughed, high-pitched and brittle. "She's not the owner. She's a landscaper. She probably came here to talk about flowers." I met her eyes. "I'm not here as a landscaper," I said quietly. "I bought this house 2 weeks ago, paid in cash." My mother blinked, like I'd spoken another language. "You bought this?" "Yes." "No, you couldn't have." She stepped forward, her voice rising. "This is impossible." "It's not," I said simply. "If you'd ever taken an interest in my work, you'd know my company's been successful for years. We manage municipal park projects in 3 cities. Last year alone, our contracts totaled $15 million. The room went still again. Lauren's face drained of color. My father looked at the realtor as if hoping for denial, but she only nodded a quiet confirmation. Lauren's lip trembled. "You did this on purpose," she said. "You stole this from me. You wanted to humiliate me." I took a step closer, meeting her eyes evenly. "You wanted the house because you thought it would make you more important. I wanted it because I worked for it. There's a difference." Tears welled up in her eyes, but her expression twisted into rage. "You're jealous. You've always been jealous." A small, humorless laugh escaped me. "No, Lauren. I stopped being jealous the moment I realized I didn't need your approval or theirs." My mother's voice cracked. "Pamela, please. She's your sister. You can sell it to her, maybe for half price." I actually laughed then. The sound startled even me. "Half price," I said, smiling coldly. "Even if you offered me double what I paid, I wouldn't sell." Lauren's tears broke into full sobs, dramatic and echoing. My parents stood frozen, one in disbelief, the other in wounded pride. The realtor quietly gathered her papers and slipped toward the door, wanting no part of what was unfolding. I walked past them all, opened the front door wide, and said, "This meeting is over. Please leave my house." No one moved, so I added softly, "Now." My parents exchanged looks, confusion, embarrassment. something else they didn't yet have the courage to name. Lauren finally stormed past me, her heels scraping the tile, her face streaked with tears. My mother followed, muttering something about family shame. My father avoided my gaze entirely. When the door closed behind them, I leaned against it and let out a shaky breath. The house was silent again, but it didn't feel empty. It felt mine. That night, I walked through the mansion's empty rooms with only the soft hum of the wind for company. The floorboards creaked beneath my steps, each sound echoing like a heartbeat against the high ceilings. The silence wasn't heavy, it was cleansing. I ended up in the parlor, the same place my family had stood hours earlier, frozen in disbelief. The air still held the faint trace of my mother's perfume, Lauren's expensive hairspray, my father's cologne, ghosts of their presence. I sank onto one of the old chairs left by the previous owner and laughed quietly to myself. For the first time in my life, I hadn't swallowed my anger. I'd let it live, let it breathe, let it speak. But satisfaction has a strange flavor, half sweet, half bitter. The next morning, I woke early and began working. The mansion needed life again. I called my design team, arranged renovation schedules, hired an architect and interior designer. I wanted to transform this place into something worthy of what I'd built. Still, part of me couldn't stop thinking about the look on their faces, the shock, the humiliation, the disbelief. It replayed like a scene from a film I hadn't meant to direct. By midweek, I was back to managing my business. Projects in 2 cities, meetings with clients, field visits. But every evening, I'd drive to the mansion and walk the grounds. The ivy was thick around the gates, the garden overgrown but full of potential. It felt symbolic chaos ready to become beauty. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Pamela. My mother's voice sharp with forced calm. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. This has gone too far, she said. Your sister is devastated. You've embarrassed her, embarrassed all of us. I leaned against the balcony railing, watching the workers below, embarrassed. By buying a house. You know exactly what I mean. I do, I said quietly. I embarrassed you by proving you were wrong about me. My mother's silence was telling. Then came the predictable plea. She's your sister Pamela. You can't let a house come between family. I laughed softly. Funny. Family came between me and everything else for years. She's in pain, my mother said. You have no idea how she's been crying. How? Stop. My voice was low but firm. You all made your choices. You mocked me, belittled my work, told me nobody cared about my gardens. You sold your country house, Grandma's house, to fund her delusions. Don't come to me now, because reality finally caught up. Her voice broke then. You sound so cold. I'm not cold, I said. Just done. I hung up before she could answer. A few days later, I found out through my aunt that Lauren had done exactly what I'd expected. She'd posted a video. It started with tears. Her makeup smeared artfully, the camera angle perfect. My sister stole my dream house, she said, voice trembling. She knew how much it meant to me, and she bought it just to hurt me. By the time I watched it, it had already reached hundreds of thousands of views. The comments poured in, some sympathetic, most skeptical. She's jealous, one comment read. Classic influencer victim act. Another sounds like your sister worked hard. Maybe you should too. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Within days, Lauren's story started falling apart. People looked me up, my company website, public contracts, press mentions. The truth was easy to find. I'd built something real. She'd built a facade. Ironically, her attempt to humiliate me only made my business boom. New clients reached out asking for designs, proposals, collaborations. Journalists called to feature our public projects. But Lauren didn't stop. Over the next week, she uploaded 2 more videos, each more desperate than the last. One was a tearful rant accusing me of being vindictive. Another was titled, The Sister Who Betrayed Me. The tone had changed. The first video had been sorrow. The next one's reeked of resentment. I didn't watch the third one. My assistant mentioned it during a staff meeting. Your sister's trending again, she said awkwardly. I smiled faintly. That's fine, let her trend. 2 days later, I received an email from my lawyer. He'd seen the videos and suggested sending a cease and desist letter. She's bordering on defamation, he said. It's smart to act now before it escalates. He sent it that afternoon. Lauren ignored it. She posted another video the very next morning. My lawyer sent a second letter, this one sharper, more formal, with clear legal consequences. That one got her attention. The videos stopped. The silence that followed was loud. I should have felt relief, but instead I felt something else, an ache I couldn't name. It wasn't guilt exactly. More like exhaustion. Years of being invisible finally seen in the harshest light. My aunt called again later that week. Your mother says Lauren's not doing well, she told me. She's losing sponsorships. Her followers are leaving. She can't handle it. That's unfortunate, I said flatly. Pamela, she's your sister. She's also a grown woman who built her whole life on lies. I didn't do this to her. She did it to herself. My aunt sighed. You sound just like your father. That caught me off guard. No, I said. I sound like someone who finally stopped begging to be understood. When the call ended, I walked outside into the half-finished garden. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. I ran my hand over the rough bark of an old oak tree, feeling its quiet endurance. I'd survived years of being dismissed and underestimated. All of it was the price of reclaiming myself. And as strange as it felt to admit, I didn't regret it. 3 weeks passed. The mansion hummed with the rhythm of progress, drills, hammers, paint fumes, and the low murmur of workers transforming the old structure into something reborn. I threw myself into the renovation sketching garden layouts at midnight, rearranging floor plans until dawn. It was the kind of exhaustion that felt clean, purposeful. But peace never lasts long in my family. One morning, as I arrived on site, my phone began vibrating relentlessly. Notifications poured in, hundreds of them. Mentions, tags, direct messages. I frowned and opened my social media feed. Lauren had posted again. The thumbnail showed her sitting in front of her camera, eyes, red makeup, carefully ruined. The title read, My Sister Destroyed My Life. I clicked play. She's been pretending for years, Lauren said, her voice trembling. Pretending to be humble, pretending she doesn't care about money. But deep down, she's always been jealous. She bought my dream house out of spite. She humiliated me in front of our parents, and now she's trying to ruin my career. I just wanted to make something of myself. I didn't deserve this. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue, her hand shaking theatrically. At the bottom of the video, a donation link blinked softly. Help me rebuild my dream. I closed my phone. By afternoon, the video had gone viral. Millions of views, reaction videos, threads. Half the comments called her out for milking drama. The other half called me every name imaginable. But within days, things began to shift. A journalist fact-checked her story and found inconsistencies. People noticed that Lauren's dream house had never been hers to begin with, that she hadn't even qualified for a loan. Screenshots of her luxury purchases surfaced, her sponsored trips, her careless posts about manifesting wealth. And then just like that, the tide turned. The sympathy dried up. The public moved from outrage to curiosity to ridicule. Comment sections filled with skepticism. So your sister worked for her money and bought a house and you're mad about it. Imagine exposing your own envy on camera. Maybe she should start a new series, Crying with Lauren. My business email flooded with new inquiries. Clients admired my composure. My company website crashed twice from traffic. I didn't celebrate, I just went back to work. But Lauren didn't stop. She posted another video, then another. In each, her tone grew sharper, her words more venomous. She accused me of betrayal, manipulation, even theft, twisting our family's history into a grotesque performance. By the 5th video, even her most loyal followers began to leave. Brands pulled sponsorships, quietly unfollowing her accounts. That's when my lawyer stepped in again. This qualifies as harassment, he said firmly. We'll send one final letter, legal action if she continues. We did. She didn't. The silence that followed wasn't triumphant. It was eerie, the kind that settles after a storm when you realize what's left standing. A month later, my aunt called. Lauren's moved back in with your parents, she said quietly. She couldn't afford rent anymore. The sponsors dropped her, the views are gone, and she's not doing well. I sat in my office, surrounded by design sketches, my phone pressed to my ear. Not doing well how? She's depressed, barely leaves her room. Your parents are worried. Now they're worried, I murmured. Pamela, please. You've made your point. She's lost everything. Do you really want to keep your distance forever? I didn't make any point, I said, voice steady. I bought a house. The rest she did to herself. My aunt sighed. Your mother cries a lot lately. She says she doesn't recognize you anymore. I stared at the plans spread across my desk lines, measurements, symmetry. That's because for the first time I'm not begging for her approval. There was a long silence on the other end. Then my aunt said softly, I think your grandmother would be proud of you. That caught me off guard. Do you? Yes, you worked hard. You built something real. She always admired that kind of quiet strength. After the call, I sat there for a long time staring at the blueprint of the mansion's garden. I could almost hear my grandmother's voice, calm, practical, steady. Don't waste your roots trying to grow in someone else's shadow. Weeks passed. The mansion bloomed under construction. The garden slowly took shape, curving pathways, hand-built, stone borders, rows of hydrangeas and wisteria vines climbing toward light. I designed every inch myself. The day the last tree was planted, I stood barefoot on the damp grass as dusk settled over the yard. The air smelled of jasmine and soil. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger or vindication, just peace. Then, as I turned back toward the house, my phone rang. Pamela, my mother's voice trembled on the line. Please, we need to meet. No, you don't. Please listen. There's nothing left to talk about, I said. This is tearing us apart. The family was already torn apart, I replied. You just didn't notice because I was the quiet one bleeding. Her breath hitched. Lauren isn't herself. She needs help. She's not stable. That's not my responsibility. Don't say that she cried. You can't turn your back on your own sister. I'm not turning my back, I said calmly. I'm finally walking forward. And with that, I hung up. The garden lights flickered on, bathing the trees in soft gold. The house glowed behind me, every window alive. I realized then that I'd spent most of my life waiting for approval, for acknowledgement, for fairness. And somewhere along the way, I'd stopped realizing that I could exist without it. The silence around me wasn't loneliness anymore. It was freedom. By the time spring came, the mansion on Ashwood Drive no longer felt haunted. The walls had been restored, the gardens alive again. Every flower bed whispering a story of rebirth. The housewarming party was my idea, not out of vanity, but as a quiet celebration of survival. I invited friends, longtime clients, and the people who had stood by me when no one else did. We set up lanterns along the pathways, hired a small jazz band, and filled the air with the scent of wine and lilacs. As guests wandered through the garden, I caught pieces of their reactions. It's breathtaking. You did this yourself? It feels alive. I smiled and nodded. That was the point. For years, I'd poured myself into other people's visions, clients, contracts, designs that carried someone else's name. This house was the first thing that belonged entirely to me. Around midnight, when the guests had gone, I walked barefoot across the cool grass. The garden lights glowed softly against the trees. I looked up at the sky and thought, it's finally quiet. The next few months unfolded like a slow exhale. The mansion became something of a local fascination. Photos of it, my house, my garden began circulating on design blogs and architecture pages. A home and lifestyle magazine reached out for an interview. Then a television show asked to film a segment. I agreed. The episode aired 3 months later. It was strange watching myself on screen walking through the same halls that had once echoed with my family's laughter and later their disbelief. But instead of pain, I felt pride. My company's name appeared at the bottom of the screen, McBride Landscapes. My phone buzzed nonstop for days. New contracts came in, bigger ones, government projects, private estates, international collaborations. I hired more staff, expanded to new cities. We hit $20 million in annual revenue. My aunt called me one evening, the excitement in her voice uncontainable. I saw the show Pamela. You were incredible. Your grandmother would have loved it. I smiled faintly. She'd probably just tell me to stop working so late. Then her tone shifted. Your mother wanted me to tell you. They're proud of you. All of them. Even Lauren. I was quiet for a moment. How's Lauren doing? She's better. Therapy's helping. She's not online anymore. Just living quietly with your parents. She talks about you sometimes. What does she say? That she wishes she could start over. That she misses her sister. I stared out my window. The garden lights shimmered against the glass. I don't hate her, I said finally, but I can't go back to pretending nothing happened. You don't have to, my aunt said softly. Sometimes peace isn't about reunion. It's just about release. After we hung up, I sat alone on the terrace, the night wrapped around me like a soft blanket. Crickets hummed in the distance, and somewhere beyond the hedges, a breeze carried the scent of rain. I thought of everything that had happened, the laughter, the humiliation, the confrontation, the silence that followed. For years, I'd believed my worth was something other people had to validate. My family taught me otherwise, painfully, but thoroughly. Now I understood something deeper. I didn't need to win. I just needed to be free. A year passed. I turned 38. I didn't hear much from my family after that, and that was fine. My aunt occasionally sent updates Lauren had taken up painting. My parents had retired to a quieter life. The house they once sold was now owned by strangers. Every morning, I started my day the same way, coffee in hand, a slow walk through my garden. The air would be cool, damp with dew, the petals still closed from the night. I'd listen to the soft rustle of leaves, the quiet pulse of something living, growing, thriving. Sometimes I'd think of that dinner years ago, the one where they laughed when I said I wanted to buy a house. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It felt distant, like a story that happened to someone else. Other times, I'd imagine my grandmother standing beside me, hands clasped behind her back, surveying the garden with her quiet smile. You did well, she might say. You grew where they thought you couldn't. And maybe in some small way, I grew because of them. Because every slight, every doubt, every cruel word planted something in me, a seed that refused to die. That evening, I sat on the terrace as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The garden shimmered in that half-light, every flower opening to the fading warmth. I thought about my sister, her laughter, her tears, her downfall, her silence. I didn't wish her harm. I just hoped she'd finally found her own version of peace. And my parents, flawed, blind, but human. Maybe someday they'd understand that love isn't measured by favoritism or pride. It's measured by presence. As for me, I no longer needed their presence to feel whole. I looked around the house. I'd rebuilt the business I'd grown, the life I'd created with my own hands. Everything was quiet, beautiful, and real. I smiled to myself, a deep, unshakable calm settling in my chest. This house, this garden, this life, I whispered, it all belongs to me. And for the first time, I'm truly free.